Hello, it's Julie Rockall here from artyheaven.com. This is the third video that I have shared this week. I've been talking on a few little different subjects, sharing a little bit about what's been happening since my move 6 months ago to I moved house from Hertfordshire to Cornwall. Yesterday I was talking a bit more about art and the healing effects that art can have on you. And people around you, and today we are talking art and fear. So the other two videos are still around, so you can still catch those. They're still on well, whichever page you're watching this on, they should be within my feed, so you can still catch those there. But yeah, today I just want to talk about art and fear and some of the things that can bring up with people, with myself, people I speak to, people that have been on workshops, etc. So I kind of hadn't really planned to touch on fear too much this week, but it's something that's come up. I've since I've it's only the third video I've done this week, but so yeah, from two videos and some comments that I've put out and a newsletter that I've sent, I've had so many messages of people just sharing things with me, which has been amazing. So thank you if that is one of you. You know, if you're one of the people that took the time to just drop me a note, because it's really appreciated, seriously. And yeah, but one of the common themes that has been coming up is fear with art, and also in a couple of groups that I'm in, one in particular. So that's why I have decided I was going to touch on fear a little bit, but not to the extent that I was planning to today. But it's coming up, so I think it's something that should be spoken about, or could be spoken about. So some of the messages, I'm just looking up, I have made notes. They rarely go to plan, but at least I've got something that I'm trying to keep, so otherwise I go off on a complete and utter tangent. So if I'm looking away, it's because I've got some scribbled notes here, and sometimes they keep me on track, sometimes they don't, sometimes we go completely off piste and something else comes along. Anyhow, so a couple of the comments that came out is, I'm going to read them just because I won't quote them correctly otherwise. So somebody reached out and said that they were trying to find their creative soul, and like the trying to find was really kind of sat with me. There was another lady that had said about a fear of judgment with their artwork, and like an unworthiness of sharing art as well. So there's all these kind of themes of fear coming out, and then another one this one I need to read because it's quite a long sentence, but questioned whether or not they actually like to be creative, which yes they do when they finally get creating, but it's the actually creating. They love it when they get started, but it is the getting started, and they would distract themselves with anything else at all beforehand to before that. And I can completely resonate with that. I think I wrote a blog years and years ago about that exact thing, and I would go and deep clean the bathroom floor before I started painting some days, and it's like, what is that all about? But it all kind of boils down, the more I kind of talk to people and exchange stories and share stories with people, it is all down to this deep-rooted fear that so many people have. So yeah, I just think within like the whole, and not just creating art, I think within the whole sort of art arena, there is this fear. So there's a fear of creating art in the first place. It's a fear of showing art. When I did it was one of my first or second open studios up in my studio up in Hertfordshire in Bourne End at the Stables. And I had a lady come in there, and she was absolutely fascinated by everything, really enthralled with it, loved it. And we people would come in and have a coffee and we'd start chatting, but her husband was saying that she paints quite a lot, but all of her artwork was actually hidden away in the attic, and she wouldn't even show it to her husband. There's this sort of deep-rooted won't show anybody, won't share it with anybody, and it's just this sort of crushing fear of bearing your soul, I suppose. And then there's a fear of selling art as well. As an artist, I know that one very well, and working with a group of many artists over the years and sharing stories, there is this kind of fear in putting yourself out there. And then in addition to that, there's also this fear of buying art. And that's another thing that I've encountered and spoken to people about. So I've been kind of doing this for about 12 years now. And, you know, you start off and you think you're in one isolated case, but over time you just keep seeing these repeating patterns coming out and out and out again. So that's why I decided to touch on fear today. And as I say, particularly with the messages that I got and the group chats that were going on, you know, I think it's a really common thing, more so than you might not even think about it or realise, but for people that are actually going through that, it is definitely a thing. So anyway, that all got me thinking. I'm going back to my notes again because I have got some bullet points, but as I say, we'll see if we stick to them or not. So, and yeah, just thinking about where this fear comes from, and I was taken back to, well, I think society and things in general, but like I think it starts at primary school. I can remember going to school and you would have handwriting lessons, and you'd sit there and you'd be doing all, you know, handwriting galore, write, and you'd hand it into the teacher and they'd mark it overnight or next week or whenever it was, and it came back and you would open the book and I don't hopefully they don't do it quite so much to kids these days, but every line you'd have like a 2-page book, and every line had like a circle around it, a line underneath it, a dot hadn't been, you know, an I hadn't been dotted or a T hadn't been done, and there's this, like, whatever you produce is scrutinised, and it, you know, you can, not everybody, I'm sure some people didn't give a hoot, but you know, some people take that really sensitively, and I think it kind of starts a little bit at that age. You're kind of putting your work out and it's there for people to see and scrutinise and make comment on. And you know, I do it myself. I go to an art gallery and I'll be like, well, that's not for me. But for somebody else it is. And I don't think anything less of the art or the artist or anything. It's just everybody's got different opinion, you know, different, what's the word, taste, you know. And so there is this thing, but we kind of end up winding it over in our heads, sometimes a bit too much, I think. And then the other thing that was, again, as I was sort of reflecting on all of this, the other thing that kind of came up was, you know, if you get, so you have financial issues going on with the markets and governments and this, that and the other, and like local councils, and the first thing generally to get cut are the arts. So I was due to be taking part in a really big event up with Decorum Council, and really looking forward to it. It sounded like a really exciting art event. They were going to celebrate artists, and then as the time got closer, I inquired about it, and they're like, oh no, sorry, that's been cut now. And you know, I just think it's one of the first things that gets cut when you're in the, but it all kind of builds into this, you know, this art being worthy, I think. And I think that, you know, there's all these different layered nuances with it, and that's kind of where a lot of it comes from. And there is just this fear, and it's always something that you should do when everything else has been done. And I think that's something that kind of comes across. And I say the more and more people I've spoken to, so many people over the last decade plus, and it's a thing that comes up again and again and again. But also it shows up in purchasing art as well. So I've had a few conversations around buying art. So if you go into an art gallery, sometimes you get a beautiful warm welcome, people are really friendly, and it's like a really great experience. But equally, you can go into some and they're really rather snooty if you can actually get them to look up from their desk in the first place. And you can kind of come out feeling a bit like feeling a bit stupid because you don't know about all the artists on display, and or you don't know enough about it. And I've definitely experienced that. I've had quite a lot of horrible situations in galleries where I've kind of come out feeling quite, it wasn't an enjoyable experience at all. And there were a couple of pieces in particular that I really wanted to buy back in my early days, and I love them. I can see them now in my mind, and it's just like it's outside of normal. But it's not like going to the supermarket and buying something, or going into a mall and buying, art galleries, and often, if you get an open studio or you get a different art venue, it's quite a different, it's not like a mainstream buying scenario. So, and there's a fear around it, it's like, oh, I don't know, am I going to make the right decision? Will I do it right? How does this all work then? And you know, and if people aren't friendly and welcoming, you know, it's quite. And also, some of them you couldn't even attract anybody's attention to even inquire about purchasing a piece either. So there's this sort of art, there's this fear from an artist's side creating art through to buyers wanting to buy art. And when it's done right, it's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic. So I'm pleased to say, I did finally pluck up the courage and buy my first art pieces. I went to an art gallery in St Albans, actually, and I don't normally name names on this on these lives, but I'm going to here. It's an artist called hey Lana, hello, lovely to see you. It was an artist called Ben Askin. I know he follows this page, so if you see this, Ben, hello, talking about you. But he was one of the. I'm pretty sure we'd gone into galleries and bought some little pieces, but we picked up some little pieces along the line. But he was the first kind of artist that I'd actually spoken to direct. Anyway, he was really welcoming. I went into his gallery in St Albans. There was no pressure. He was quite happy. I could stay in there for 5 minutes or for an hour. He wasn't concerned in the least. And I just saw this piece and I fell in love with it. I knew it was for Freddie Mercury. I knew I had to have it. I knew my husband would love it as well. And I was like, oh, I really want it. Again, it's that like, oh, do I really need it? Do I, you know, and that whole narrative that runs through your head, all the reasons you try and talk yourself out of it. You know, what if I get it wrong? What if it's not the right thing? Da 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 da. So all this chit chat goes through your head. But anyway, I left the gallery and said I really loved it, but you know, left and pootled off home, and I could not get it out of my mind. So I knew that I had to have it. Anyway, I'd taken his card and called him back and said, could you put it by for me? I'll come and get it. Anyway, we chatted away, and it turned out he was actually coming over my way. So he actually dropped it into my house for me as well. And it was just it was a really heartwarming. I loved the transaction. It was brilliant. It was, you know, and I mean, oh, crikey, I don't know how many years ago that would have been now. 8, 9 years ago, maybe. I can't remember. I don't know, 7, 8. But I've still got that piece. Well, both of us, we still love it. And it ties back in with, I was talking yesterday about the art and the healing, and I think it was yesterday's video that I did, or the last video I did, or the one, I don't know. There's 2 that I've done, so they're both still around. But the lady that contacted me and said, you know, I'm still talking about your art all these years later. So it's it kind of ties back into that same thing. When you've had a really good experience with that, you're not just buying a widget that's a one-off thing. It's, you know, when it's a transaction that's done right, you can come away feeling really, really great. And when you kind of get over that fear of actually, you know, making the purchase and buying the thing. Excuse me, I've still got this sniffy nose. So anyhow, that was another thing around fear. And then the other thing that came. So all these, I said to you I was going to share a few stories this week. So the other thing that I was going to say about as well is I went to a party recently, and it was from a couple. They bought a few pieces from me over the years, and as I said in the previous videos, whilst you're creating them and you remember them and they're there, once they're kind of gone, you do tend to forget about them again. They're not completely forgotten, but you know, they're not in your view, so they kind of leave, you know, you go from mind. Anyway, went around to their house, and all of these art pieces were up on the wall, and it was just like, oh my god, they look amazing. It was so good to see them in person. It was just, it really, really gave me a lift up. It was amazing to see them. And then there were 2 or 3 other people there who'd also bought pieces from me over the years. And again, it goes back to this, you know, they're like, oh, I've still got your piece. I've got it hanging in XYZ room. I love it. It's so good. And like, just, there were loads of people there. It was a housewarming party. And, you know, to get that kind of feedback is just freaking amazing. So I'm pleased that, you know, once you kind of get over that fear, there's a really great experience on the other side, is what I guess I'm trying to say. But anyhow, but there's a couple of things that come up for me with this fear. As I say, I've said already, you know, whether you're creating it, whether you're showing it, whether you're sharing or buying. But there's 2 things that help me with it, and one of them, so hopefully if you've kind of find similar things, or any of these areas resonate with you, then maybe this will help you. So for me, one of them is public accountability. I am very good at hiding away behind the scenes and quite happily working in my own little world and not sharing things. So public accountability is great. When I started doing these videos this week, I sent a newsletter out to my people on my newsletter, strangely enough, saying that I was going live this week. So it's like public accountability. I make myself do it. So I also book myself in for exhibitions, because then once I'm booked and I know the dates and they're in my diary, I know that I can't wriggle out of it. And you know, it works. It gives you, and once I've done it, I feel amazing. And you're like, why didn't I just do that in the first place? So sometimes, you know, you might just need that little bit of a push over the edge. So talking of public accountability, I said I'm going to share my art this week as well. So I've got a couple more pieces in here now. I'll show a couple more, but I am actually I'm going to share all of my art. And again, for this reason, public accountability, tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Public accountability. So that's Friday the 24th at 6 o'clock UK time. I'm going to share my art. Now, I'm a bit worried about that because I've got a couple of calls. I've got an interview tomorrow and a call tonight, and I've got to sort some tech out for that as well. So fingers crossed I can put it together. But I think what I'll do is I'll say 6 o'clock tomorrow, and then also Saturday morning, I think, as well, or Saturday at some time. So for any bits that I don't manage to get on, I will also share on Saturday. So there'll be some tomorrow evening at 6 and some on Saturday. If you've been on any of my other lives this week, I've been sharing some of these art pieces. I'll show one now actually, just so you can see. So there's a couple here. I haven't got the full pieces. I've got to work out how I'm going to set this room up. But look at the colours on this. This is part of a 7-piece called Chakra, and there's a reason that I haven't shared it yet. So made a bit of a glaring error with it. So I'm going to share about that tomorrow. But I'm going to do an art sale. So I am going to, there's some pieces here that they've never been seen before, and I'm going to put them out. I'm going to stop being invisible. No, stop being I'm going to be visible, whichever way around that was. I've lost my train of words. So I'll be sharing some art pieces tomorrow. I've got some big ones, some medium ones, and some small ones. So depending on, you know, there are a variety. I've got some framed and some, no, framed? I've got some on wooden boards ready to just hang on the wall. And I've got some unframed paper pieces as well. And some mounted ones like I've just shown you. So I'm going to share those properly. It's going to be a bit rough and ready, and it's going to be, it'll be what it will be. So I'm going to do that tomorrow and Saturday. So that's one thing. So public accountability was my point I was getting to. And then the other thing as well is just start. You know, sometimes there really are legitimate reasons why you just can't get creative and you can't start painting, you know, moving house being one of them. But even so, I've still managed to scribble on the back of an envelope. I've got loads of random, you know, sketches in my diary. You know, they're never going to see the light of day, but it does just help you as an individual to create like that. And so like a regular routine. So once you start, even if it's just the tiniest bit, personally, I've found that the momentum builds, and I can kind of get started with it then. So, you know, whether that's booking yourself a class somewhere, seeing what's around in your local area, particularly if you kind of get like a 6-week or something, like a term class where you know you've got to be there on a particular time. It's a bit like going to the dentist or the doctor. You make sure you're there at the time that you need to be there. So that's really good for if you're, you know, got that fear around starting to create in the first place, if that's what you want to do. And just getting some form of accountability, whether that's an exhibition or a class, or, you know, maybe it's just a one-off taster night, whatever it might be. So yes, so I did share on Monday about some things that I've got. So if you want help with encaustic, whichever way, just give me a shout. I'll be happy to point you in the right direction, whether that's an in-person, I've got online courses, that kind of thing. Anyway, feel free to drop me a message. I'd be happy to reply to that. And then what else was I going to say? And then, I was just going to wrap up and say I'm keeping these fairly short, so as much as I can. just be kind to yourself, basically. Don't beat yourself up. You know, I think amongst artists there is this fear around creating. Jasper Johns has some great quotes. He's an encaustic wax artist. In fact, I love his work. I think he's amazing. It's really inspiring for me. He's an American encaustic painter, and he holds the record for the most expensive painting ever sold by a living artist, which was an encaustic piece called Flag. So I always think he's sort of waving the flag for encaustic artists as well. But I really resonate with his work, the stories he has to share, so many of his quotes. But I'm pretty sure it was him that said something along the lines of, dog started barking, now I've lost my train of thought. You keep avoiding it until you can't avoid it anymore, or something, so that you get this niggle. You know you want to be creative, you know you want to get some paint and some marks down, but yeah, just, you know, you will, and you know, it's really easy to procrastinate and avoid, but at some point you get to a point you're like, I've really got to do this, and once you start you're like, why didn't I do that sooner? So anyway, so yeah, just be kind to yourself, really. It doesn't need to be. And I was on a programme with a lady, and one of the things she always used to say is done is better than perfect, and that is going to be my motto for this week. So already, regardless of anything else that goes on this week, just the messages and the conversations that I've had that have come up have been amazing from people, and the fact that, you know, me holding this phone in my hand, no stand, no anything, but you know, even that has just opened up conversations, and people have just messaged me, which has been amazing. People have shared their artwork. You know, I was sharing some art earlier, and my testimonials page, that's right, and so people, you know, they've one chap said it, my painting just always brought him home. He was a long way from home and reminded him of home, so that was amazing as well. So yeah, done is better than perfect, really. And just, yeah, don't beat yourself up. Put it out there, put your work out there, share it. Don't hide it in the attic, as you know, and not even show your husband. Just, you know, and do you know, the other thing as well is you don't have to make something that everybody is going to love. You know, the internet is a big enough place. If it's something that doesn't interest you or somebody else, there's plenty of other options and artists and people to chat to about it, or, you know, go and see, or styles, or whatever it might be. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up here. So that was my babble and take on art and fear today. So as I say, I wasn't planning to go this far in depth, but because all of those conversations had come up this week, I decided that it was something that I was going to talk about today. So yeah, just remember those two tips: public accountability and getting yourself booked into a regular, or just start and then get yourself, if you can, book into a regular time commitment, and you'll find it gets easier and easier. But I think we all have it as creatives, no matter whether you're just beginning or whether you've been painting for a very long time. I think it can be present and there for a lot of people. It's just a case of overcoming that. Anyhow, I will be back tomorrow, as I've just publicly announced that I will have an art sale on at 6 o'clock. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be going through my paintings live on here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put them all onto my website so that you can actually look at them as well, and I'm going to send that out to my newsletter. So if you're on my newsletter, which you can sign up for at the bottom of my homepage, which is artyheaven.com, the sign up button at the bottom, I'm going to send that link out to everybody on my newsletter at 5 o'clock tomorrow UK time. How's that for public accountability? That means I'm going to be working all night on tech, trying to cobble some tech together. So yes, so I'll be sending those pieces out. They are going to be, yeah, quick photographic snaps. There won't be any of the detail that go with the paintings, and that's why I'm calling it like I say, an art sale. I don't tend to do sales of my art, but I'm going to do these because, well, I'll explain tomorrow why, but yeah, it's going to be a quick, rough and ready art sale. I'm going to do it for this week, and I'm not sure when I'll finish it, but it will be for a really short, limited time, and I'll go into that more tomorrow. But I'm actually travelling back up to Hertfordshire, so it will need to be closed before a few days before I leave. So anyway, more on that tomorrow. So jump on if you are free tomorrow at 6 o'clock here on my Julianne's Gallery Facebook page, and make sure you're on my newsletter to get the link at 5 o'clock. Public accountability works every time. All right, take care. Bye.